How to let go and find inner peace. This video is designed to be one of contribution to your journey to creating what you desire. The idea behind it is that different circumstances and experiences can show up on the journey, and we create an emotional attachment to these aspects, which appear to bind us there, bring us to a place of stagnation, anger, frustration, stress. And one of the things we want to learn is how to let go in the inner world, the meaning that we give to those experiences, to create what we call inner peace surrounding that aspect. And as a result, find the relevant pathway, the step forward, release the stress, frustration about the circumstance, and continue moving forward to creating what we desire from a place of flow or bliss, joy, ease. Much of the journey can be riddled with stress, frustration, but it doesn't have to be. It's based on meaning. Most of the meaning is really based on past experience, or the mind overly active, forming what we call the ego mind, which is overly identified with the past or the future, rather than being present and realizing that the moment right now is contributing to the destination. It's part of your journey. Now we're going to look at it from 5 perspectives. Number 1, being present and enjoying each moment. And the idea behind it is that all that really exists is this particular moment. The mind, when overly active, is constantly living in the future or in the past. And the easiest way to identify if you are living in the future and in the past, rather than being present to this moment in relation to the goal, which is the future, is the observation of the tension and how you feel about whatever shows up. Letting go. Number 2, keeping your mind lightheartedly engaged. Building what we call a heart and mind relationship. The heart desires and the mind creates. Number 3, understanding that the outer world is only suggesting meaning. Now, this is something that may be experienced as difficult to understand if we're overly identified with our ego and only seeing it from our own perspective. In other words, seeing the outer world as a threat when there isn't a threat that exists on the journey to creating what we desire, but rather a suggestion that is interpreted as a threat from the world within. Number 4, allowing yourself to be who you are, because at the end of the day, this is not just about creating what you desire, but it's creating what you desire from the way that you desire to create it, which is who you are, being who you are. And number 5, assume the affirmation in experiences. Reality is an externalization of consciousness, and it is based on certain affirmations or experiences, which are a form of affirmations that affirm reality to be a certain way from our own personal interpretation. We have the ability to see what shows up, circumstances, experiences, and release from the identification in which we have mental rigidity towards it, grip it psychologically, and experience stress and frustration by evolving the meaning of that particular aspect to one of affirmation and contribution. We'll talk about that. So number 1, be present and enjoy each moment. This is one of the first steps of being able to let go and find inner peace. When the mind is stuck in the past or future, we find ourselves in disharmony with our being. We tend to forget that the present moment is all that actually exists. This present moment. It's the overly active conscious mind which begins to identify with certain experiences from past and future, otherwise we call this the ego mind, that we want to let go of. Always remember that wherever you are, in different circumstances and experiences that you have on your journey to creating what you desire, you have 3 choices. You could remove yourself from that circumstance or environment. You could change that environment by changing yourself within and observing your thoughts and emotions and behaviors and interactions with that environment change. Or you could accept that environment fully. This is how you would let go and become present. Only 3 choices. And any one of these choices can work for you. And I can't tell you which choice is the right one based on your environment and circumstance. But this will allow you to let go and bring yourself into the present moment. Number 2, keeping your mind lightheartedly engaged. Everyone knows I'm a huge fan of the concept flow. Flow is where challenge meets skill. I certainly mention it a lot. It is also a place where we find what we call the heart and mind relationship. The heart desires and the mind creates. The heart can bring you down certain pathways, which we call unconventional, but however, when the mind works with these pathways, we're able to bring forth success in the most creative ways, ways that may not have been discovered before. There are infinity ways of creating success, infinity ways of bringing forth your goals, just like there's infinity possibilities for goals. However, the pathway that is the most in alignment, should we desire to go down that pathway, is one of flow and contribution to what we desire to create, lightheartedness. And we do this by maintaining a certain state of mind, lightheartedness. And one of the best ways to really emphasize this lightheartedness is to be able to gauge ourselves on our mental fluidity. If we're too rigid in our mind, in other words, identified with the ego mind, we start to blame the outer world and get frustrated about certain experiences in relation to our goal. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that the outer world fact is wrong. What it means is that perhaps we are overly identified with it, and we can change the meaning within to release from it so we can move forward. If the goal is to achieve the goal, then we want to move forward. If we constantly identify with or regularly identify with certain aspects based on certain meaning, we may find ourselves stagnating, feeling stuck, exhausted, burning out. Many ways of creating success, one from a place fundamentally from flow or autotelic, as discussed in my more recent videos, or from a place of force. It does not have to be from a place of force, although in the journey we may learn that there's certain force aspects within ourselves that we are holding on to, meaning within, that is creating the force in the outer world. And as we grow on this journey, by applying these processes or these ways, we release from them. We find ourselves more in flow. And the way to gauge it is to observe if you're lighthearted about the circumstance. Your mind is akin to a tool that you could use to create reality. It is something that you control. Although when we have certain emotional reactions to our certain experiences that we have a hard time letting go. And then as a result of identifying with that emotional reaction, we move in that direction. And it appears that the emotions have control over us. But through the process of practicing letting go, we'll actually find that we have the ability to quiet the mind and use it as something that can contribute to what we desire to create, which is based on our heart desires. We're able to direct it and not allow it to direct us. Remember this, we want to direct the mind and not allow it to direct us. In other words, recreate our past or cause us to hold on, mental rigidity, to the different experiences that we're having on the journey to creating what we desire. This is also known in today's world as letting the ego mind run the show. And when we say the ego mind, we're referring to that part of us that is bringing us in a direction. And although we might not realize in that moment that we are identified with it, through experiences, we realize in retrospect that we were identified with it to bring us through certain effect-based experiences that are undesirable. We want to consciously work with our mind. So letting go is a conscious practice. Conscious practice. Now, the reason why we're looking at the mind from these perspectives is because it helps us realize that we have the ability to choose. That's the power of letting go, realizing that you have the ability to choose, and you don't have to be overly identified with the mind, lost in your mind. As a result of being overly identified with the mind and not listening to the heart desires, your intuition, we'll find ourselves developing further this ego mind, which will result in finding fault in others unnecessarily, creating frustration, pain, and certain circumstances that were unnecessary to creating what you desire, which were revelations of the mind and manifestations of the mind that was identifying with certain meaning. We want our mind to be part of the flow and not trying to control the flow. So flow is where challenge meets skill. If you want to be more lighthearted, then place yourself in as many situations as you can that allows you to find flow. Situations that may be challenging, but you're excited about, you're engaged in the process, which is why I always recommend the book Flow by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. The idea is I could tell you, be more lighthearted, but it may not make any sense if you're overly identified with the ego. One has to realize what lighthearted means by being in the flow. Now remember this. In order to stay lighthearted, we've got to pick a task or a project, commit to finding flow through the process of flow, as identified in the video discussion that I did on flow. I'll put a link in the description, and remain there and practice it on a daily basis. Then we'll understand that it is the emotion that we associate with the outer world that can cause the emotional turmoil. Okay? It's the emotion that we associate with the outer world that causes the emotional turmoil. So the mind interprets reality from certain perspectives, and as a result of those perspectives, we have an emotional reaction. If we interpret reality as a threat, we're going to get an emotional reaction of threat. And as we get that emotional reaction of threat, which may not be the valid emotional reaction for that circumstance, we become identified with that emotion, and we hold on to that emotion, bring ourselves into that state of mind, and create reality or the experiences accordingly. Now we want to catch ourselves prior to identifying with the emotion, or as we identify with the emotion. And this is something you get better at with practice by exercising what we call the mental diet. 21-day mental diet, which was based on the very important book, 7-Day Mental Diet, that I learned from Emmett Fox, is something that I discussed a handful of videos ago. I recommend you study it and apply it. The key concept is it's not the negative thought, but the dwelling in the negative thought that brings us in a direction what we call disharmony. In order to maintain lightheartedness, we develop the ability to realize that we are identifying with a thought by dwelling upon it, be it a negative thought in this case. Now, when you dwell in the negative thought, the emotion will show up that will further bind you there. And a lot of times, if we haven't been doing the work on our mind to evolve our understanding of our mind in relation to emotions, we'll find ourselves reacting to the emotion and going in the direction assuming that it has power over us. And in that moment, it does, but it doesn't have to. Number 3, understand that the outer world is only suggesting the meaning. Now, on the journey to creating success, bringing forth what you desire, and I speak a lot to the entrepreneurial space, you're going to be met with suggestions, how to run your business, how to do things. And these things may or may not be in harmony or in relation to the way that you are designing your life and your business and the kind of success that you want to see. If we unnecessarily have within us this need for approval or seeing validation based on the outer world and getting an ego boost as a result of approval and validation, it can evoke certain emotions based on the suggestions from the outer world. And we might end up doing those things, only to realize that they weren't the things that we really wanted to do. We emotionally identified with a suggestion from the outer world in which we assumed by identifying with it, we would get approval from the outer world or a person, or validation from the outer world. And this can be very powerful because if a person does not realize that this is happening, then they realize that many decisions that they have made that had nothing to do with creating what they desire, but rather bringing them on different pathways that had nothing to do with creating what they desire, or bringing them on unnecessary convoluted pathways to creating what they desire, is a result of seeking approval and validation from the outer world. We have to remember, if you want to maintain a greater ability to work with your mind, it's the understanding and the affirmation that all approval and validation comes from within. And you're happy to share it with others. And certainly if you receive approval and validation from others, you can enjoy it. But the moment we become dependent on approval or validation from others, we'll find ourselves holding on to certain experience and emotionally reacting, emotionally identifying, and moving down the pathway of that suggestion, which may not be what you desire to create. Now, as you get better at it, you'll be able to identify this in the moment. You'll see suggestions and advertising and some persuasion, and you'll be able to feel if it's resonant with you or not. The key is to pause and feel if it's resonant with you or not. This is also what I call intuition, inner voice conversation, whatever you want to call it. It is the being within you that is helping you create what you desire, the way you want to see it brought forth. When we relinquish or let go of an emotion, we let go of the related thoughts. So if we catch it in the moment, the suggestion or the persuasion, and we say, you know what, this may or may not be related to what I desire to create. Is it? And then you realize that it is not. You can then realize in that moment that you have a choice. You can dwell upon it or you can let it go. If you dwell upon it, in other words, doubt yourself about it, there will be certain thoughts that will show up that will further bind you there. Any thought or emotion that you dwell in will bring forth related thoughts, which can appear to bind you there, which will make it difficult for you to let go. You can also, if you choose, understand the suggestions, understand the outer world. Certainly, I'm a big fan of this, cause and effect reflection. I always like to understand aspects about the outer world and reality, and then choose accordingly. We call this accurate thinking, choosing accordingly, if you'd like. Or you can learn to trust yourself and your intuition and tune yourself into it. What you're going to find is that when you're in harmony, the heart and mind work together. Not only were you intuitively going to make that decision, but your mind gives you the valid reasons why. You're able to articulate why. You get better at it with practice through the process of realizing that the outer world is only suggesting meaning to you. Seeing it from this perspective, it's a suggestion. And you could choose to go along with it if you'd like, or you could choose to go along with it in a way that's right for you, or you could choose to let go of it. As mentioned earlier, there's only 3 things we could do with environment. See a suggestion as part of the environment. You can change it, you can remove yourself from it, or you can accept it. Now, if you accept it, doesn't mean you necessarily have to go along with it. It could mean that you accept it and you understand it and choose something else. This will also bring you a higher degree of inner peace. Now, when in doubt, or if you feel overwhelmed, as mentioned, being in flow, all the stuff that I'm talking about is going to be a lot easier for you if you choose flow and maintain flow. When in doubt, remember, visions of the ideal recalibrates the mind back into your vision and brings clarity to the present. The key is to bring ourselves back to the present moment. When we start to think about the past or the future unnecessarily, it's important to reflect, but unnecessarily overthinking, we have then identified with the suggestion, or we're in the process of dwelling in that suggestion, emotional reaction. Now, the way to bring you back into calibration to where you desire to go is to imagine the outcome that you desire, or to read your goal look at your vision or your vision board and feel yourself recalibrating back to that vision. Realize that this is where you're going. And what you'll notice is then you'll have a higher degree of clarity. You'll have a greater ability to connect with your inner voice and be able to choose. Wisdom is knowing the difference. You'll be able to identify what suggestion you move towards, and you'll be able to let go from unnecessary convolution or complexity, overthinking. Number 4, allow yourself to be who you are. We have a self-image. We also have what we call the higher self, or otherwise referred to as the vision of who we are becoming. It's an aspect or a self-image that we have of the future version of ourselves that we aspire to move towards. And as a result of being that individual or affirming that aspect of ourselves, that self-image on ourselves, we begin to have in harmony-based thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in relation to what we desire to create. All this stuff becomes more automatic. You don't have to think as much about letting go. This is really if you find yourself stuck and having a hard time letting go. But if you are in alignment with that end result, that vision, then you'll have inner peace because you'll understand all these things as it shows up. You won't even have to think about all the stuff that I'm talking about. But however, by bringing it to conscious awareness, you can reflect upon it, because if it does show up, then we remember there's something not in alignment within us and we can adjust it accordingly. So who you are, who you aspire to be, is where your heart is going to bring you to. That's your heart desire. If you try to be someone that you're not, you're going to know within that you are not being who you are, and there's going to be internal turmoil and conflict. Now, this is a journey. So we realize more so each day if we are or if we are not, in what area of our life. And I really recommend studying the Robert Dilts model. I did a discussion on the Robert Dilts model because this conceptual model can really help you work with different areas of reality to allow yourself to be who you are, which is part of letting go. There's vision, as in what you desire to create. There's your identity, which is your self-image, which you're constantly evolving. Most work happens on the evolution of yourself and your relation to the outer world. Values and beliefs, which are indications of your identity. As you believe, so it shall be done unto you. The values and beliefs that you have about yourself and reality and others externalize themselves to reveal themselves. So we change our values and beliefs and bring it into an alignment with our identity. Capabilities. What we're talking about here is an actual capability. It's a skill. 5 different things that you can do to let go is a skill, or any kind of capability, mental model, or ways of navigating reality, or physical skill. Let's say you're a computer programmer, learning the computer programming language. That's the capability. We want to develop those, and we want to work with them so that we can create the success that we desire. And we want to ask ourselves, in relation to this 4th point here about allowing yourself to be who you are, is whatever I'm experiencing right now, the emotional reactivity, or something that you're stuck in your head about, where you have mental rigidity, in alignment with these aspects in the Robert Dilts model? Is it in alignment with my vision? Is it in alignment with the identity of the person that I aspire to be? Is it in alignment with the values and beliefs that I want to affirm within myself? Capabilities and behaviors and environment is where flow happens. Flow is where challenge meets skill. If you have challenge, then you develop more capability. You develop a certain behavioral pattern that allows you to work with that challenge. You acquire new skill as a result. The environment, see it as the experience. As mentioned earlier, what you're really doing is observing the suggestions from your environment and choosing, which happens automatically when you're in flow or when you're autotelic. But on the journey, as we're getting back into it and maintaining it, we might have to consciously use our mind to choose. Not the ego mind, but the aspect of us, the conscious mind, that is designed to bring us in the right direction. The guardian of the subconscious. The conscious choice is made by you. You choose it. You have the ability to choose it. But if we lose the presence of mind, then we have to practice letting go. And as mentioned, the easiest way to let go is realize that there's only 3 things that you can do to let go and bring yourself into the present moment, where all the power is to do all the stuff that I'm talking about. You can remove yourself, you can excuse yourself from that circumstance or environment in that moment, or permanently. You can change it, you can do something about it, or evolve within your self-image, your values and beliefs, your capabilities and behaviors, and thus change the environment, working with the Robert Dilts model, or you can accept it. Acceptance of the environment is very powerful as well. All of these discernment factors, whether you change it, whether you remove yourself from it, whether you accept it, is found by working with your own inner voice. Watch the video I did on inner voice of discernment. I'll put a link in the description. Or you can connect with somebody else who already has the results, or already has the experiences, or already has been through these kinds of circumstances, maintains a certain degree of flow and understanding, and has great ability to let go. And you can understand aspects about their identity, their values and beliefs, their capabilities, their behaviors and environment, and so forth. And in a way, borrow and affirm, which brings me to my next point. Assume the affirmation in experiences. So before we get into it, one more final point related to number 4. Accept and then act. Okay, so 3 forms of acceptance. Change the environment, accept it the way it is, or remove ourselves from the environment. You don't have to force yourself to stay in that environment. You don't have to force yourself to change that environment. You'll know if you can just as easily let go by moving away from it. Now, this doesn't mean you're in a place of denial. This means you're in a place of understanding, because by stepping away from an environment, it can help you reflect, understand, and accept, and cause and effect reflect, or just let it go. This is one of the things that binds us to circumstances. We assume that you've got to stay there in that unhealthy environment. And I can't tell you if that environment is one you should stay in or not. But these are elements that I use. This process right here has helped me. Because no matter where I am on my journey, when I need to let go, I just ask myself the simple question. Ask my inner voice within. And by maintaining the lightheartedness and the flow and the heart-mind relationship, the answer is crystal clear. Do I change this environment? Do I accept it? Or do I remove myself? And right away I know the answer. And then I take the necessary steps. So accept and act. This will allow you to work with it and not against it. Okay, work with it, not against it. This will allow you to turn the obstacle into an opportunity. Now, you've heard me say this many times. Everything is contributing to your definite chief aim. And your definite chief aim is contributing to all attributes and aspects of reality. As in, your success is the success of others, and others' success is your success. This is a state of mind, an understanding, a way of being, a value and belief that creates identity to be a certain way, one of harmony with the outer world, benefit for you, others, divine, and evolution. And as a result of affirming that, what you're going to find is that none of these actions, as far as letting go, is about conflict. It's actually about inner peace. As the saying goes, wisdom is knowing the difference. And I trust that many attributes and aspects in this conversation have helped you facilitate that inner voice connection that knows. You know the answers. They're within you. They were always within you. Assume the affirmation and experience, number 5. Sometimes your tasks related to your goal and your vision can take your attention away from the present moment, which has all the power. So common theme again. All the power is with you in this present moment. Letting go is the act of surrendering and bringing yourself into the present moment and saying, okay, here I am, what can I do about it? Pause and reflect on how different aspects within your awareness contribute to your goal and vision. This is one of the best ways of realizing that where you are on your journey right now, because you know where you're going, is actually in harmony and contributing to what you desire to create. The question is, how so? If you sit with somebody who's very good at finding out how so, they can reveal it to you, but we also want to be able to develop this ability to do it with ourselves. So the easiest thing to do is ask these questions. Number 1, how can I adapt and enjoy to release from the mental rigidity? Realizing that mental rigidity is the ego mind what we call the ego mind, which is not the aspect of the conscious mind that we want to identify with when we want to let go, is going to be focused on the future or the past in an unnecessarily gripping way. It's not to say don't value the future. Certainly we're talking about vision and achieving goals, or reflecting on the past, but rather doing it from a place of lightheartedness, being in the flow. So you ask yourself about the circumstance. How can I adapt to it and enjoy it? Or you can ask yourself, how can I release myself, let go of this environment, change it, accept it, or remove myself from it? You'll start to get the answers within. This will also facilitate your inner voice conversation. As a result of this, you'll have a higher degree of self-esteem, which, by the way, when you have a high degree of self-esteem and self-confidence within yourself, this stuff is automatic, autotelic in relation to the goals that you desire to create. Next question. How can I step outside from my own perspective and see it from another? Everyone reveals to us attributes about ourselves. We have relationships and connections with people. Even if you don't necessarily know them, there's certainly a lot of videos and blogs and people sharing their experiences. They have these different perspectives about the same circumstance. Could you be inspired by their messages, their perspectives? They may reveal to you certain perspectives about your circumstance that will allow you to let go. Number 3, how can I take myself less seriously and be more lighthearted about it? So again, the keys here: lightheartedness, releasing from mental rigidity, and realizing that there's only 3 things that you can do. You can remove yourself from that particular circumstance or environment, change it, or accept it. Brings you into a level of peace. You bring yourself into that level of surrender or acceptance. Same thing. And then act, and then choose. And in order to do this from a place of joy and valuing this as part of the journey, okay, this is part of the journey. This can happen to you. You can get stuck. You can be identified with certain things. That definitely does happen. But through using these kinds of processes and understandings about what is happening and realizing that it's not necessarily the thought, but the emotional reaction or the emotional meaning, which gets into further, deeper subconscious mind work. But just by asking the question, am I taking myself too seriously right now, or this circumstance way too seriously than I need to? Usually on the journey to create the success we desire, we put unnecessary over-importance on the circumstance or ourself, our persona, the self-image. In other words, we become egotistical and take ourselves and the situation too seriously. And we can be more lighthearted about it. Now, lightheartedness is a state of being. It's a way of being. It's a way of life. So it's important then to practice lightheartedness in all areas of your life. But in relation to number 5 here, which is assume the affirmation experience, as a result of asking yourself these questions with the reflection on your experiences or the circumstance that you're having, in which you have identified with emotionally and now are stuck in, and you want to let go of it, you can actually see how all of this is revealing to you about yourself. It's actually contributing as to what you can do. Now, when you see it from this perspective, when you see how the different attributes of the experience are actually contributing to what you desire to create by asking these questions, you then have a higher degree of inner peace. You start to see how things are in alignment and how things are actually in your favor. And all you have to do is reflect in that moment about those circumstances in relation to your goal. And then when you get those attributes through these questions, it's important to affirm them. Affirm them. This is part of the subconscious mind work. And I'll put a link to my 4 modalities video. Only 4 modalities that I use. Whatever the attributes are that show up for you in relation, here's an example. If you say, how can I adapt and enjoy to release from mental rigidity? Perhaps you reflect upon and you say, I'm taking myself way too seriously. I'm just going to be lighthearted about it. I'm going to look at other perspectives of others that have done the particular experience and created success, or had the particular experience and created success. And I'm going to affirm their perspectives. So let's say the perspective was about building teams, as mentioned earlier. Number one is mental rigidity. You're trying to get people to do certain things. You found another leader that is able to connect your team's goals or their team's goals to their vision where they're all in harmony together. That's a new perspective. Instead of trying to get people to do things your way, you now adopt that perspective of their way plus your way plus the vision in harmony and building the leadership around that particular way of looking at reality. You then affirm it through the four modalities: subconscious mind audios, self-talk. This is a form of self-talk. We're having a conversation about this right now. If this video and this conversation is affirming and revealing certain insights and perspectives within you, then it is helpful to you. It is also could be an audio affirmation. You could play it again and again and get even more insights and perspectives as you apply it. Environment. What kind of environment facilitates the kind of stuff that we're talking about right now? Or in that particular example, what kind of environments, mastermind groups, people that are very masterful at leadership, that affirm the attributes, can you be around them? Can you set up your team environment to be in alignment? Certainly one of the things that I do in my consulting business is I work with companies to build a relationship using all these principles with their team, and they move together as a unit in harmony to create success. And really what I'm looking for is their perspectives, the team's perspectives on the interactions or the experiences of working in the business, the perspective of the entrepreneur or the business owner, and their vision and what they're looking to create, and aligning them all together by setting up their environment, their processes, their systems, their ways of doing things within the business, which is many attributes, and bringing it into alignment of harmony, the environment. And most of the stuff, whether we have an ability to let go of or we find ourselves in mental rigidity, is a result of consistent habit, constant habit. If you have the constant habit of being able to let go and automatically or from a flow perspective implement these things I'm talking about, you're going to find that your journey to success is a lot more joyous and blissful. However, if you have a hard time letting go and you have too much mental rigidity, then probably your environments are facilitating it further because it's a reflection of who you are, as well as past environments brought you to where you are right now to recreate it. But you don't have to identify with it. You can let go of it. You can realize that the environment is further affirming that programming. So the four modalities: subconscious mind audios, self-talk, revision, and environment. Very important. So letting go is about the conversation, the inner dialogue, the mental associations we have to the environment, whatever makes up your environment. You can try to force change in the environment, and that may work. But when we're speaking about psychological letting go, we're talking about changing perspective so that we can find inner peace within ourselves in relation to the environment, which is really, simply put, accepting. Again, really study the work by David Hawkins on the concept of letting go because he gets into a lot of nuances. But the key is acceptance. Accepting where you are right now and then acting upon it. And if you want to maintain this, step back into your flow. Bring yourself into the lighthearted flow where you embrace the challenge and skill and enjoy this journey. You're going to get to your destination, and you want to get there from a place of joy, bliss, and ease and flow rather than frustration. And one of the ways to do that is by letting go. And letting go is complete acceptance. And acceptance can be in the form of changing the environment, accepting the environment the way it is, or removing yourself from the environment. And really, this decision, this understanding is found in the present. Because in the present, we release from the overly identified attachment to the future that is, a lot of times when we're not letting go, it's fear-based. Or the past, again, fear-based, in which we assume from the perspective of the fear. If you want to copy this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.